Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Decryption and I hope you are well. In the previous tutorials for the Batman death scene setup we're doing, we made this cool intro and outro thing where the character walks in, animates, does something and then they walk off. It's getting good, but it can be better. So in today's tutorial, what we're going to do is we're going to start adding the fading in and fading out of the camera to make it look like they're really coming from nowhere. And then we're going to start looking at adding the UI in order to actually progress the game again, restart and do whatever you need. So let's get started. So you will notice that when I play it, as opposed to the old ones, the sky is now blue instead of black now. And it appears that Ultra Dynamic Skies had an update, which is fine, but you can no longer as easily get a black sky. But I found a really easy solution to it. I'm just going to delete Ultra Dynamic Sky out of the level. We don't really need it, and it achieves the same thing, look, which is absolutely perfect. I think we definitely need to play with the spotlight a little bit just to make it not as bright. I don't know why it's got suddenly so much brighter, but if we just half this intensity, yeah, much better. It's no longer as bright and it's still got the crisp shadows and it's all getting. So I've just set it to 1 and that seems to be working much better. There we go. Yeah. So the first thing we're going to do is actually make the camera fade in and fade out on this screen. Not for a long time, but just enough. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come and open my data table for the death scenes we have. And then basically for each animation that we're using, I'm going to add a montage notifier. And what we're going to do is we're going to tell it specifically when it should start fading camera out, because each animation is going to want to fade it out differently, so we don't want to do it in the same place. So it's super simple to do. At the point where they've finished the animation and they're doing their walk away thing, so say we'll say about here, we're going to go to the notifiers track on number 1, and we're going to right click, add notify, and then montage notify. I'm simply going to click it and come and set its name, start light. And then I've pretty much got to come and do this for every single animation we've got. But luckily, you can actually copy and paste it. So if I open up the first montage, copy the notifier, open up the second one just at the side here, I can paste it in where I want it. So I'm just going to time lapse now of me doing this and I'll be back in a moment. And for the final one, as soon as he starts walking away, I will just hover over the area, paste, and then... So now that we've got all the animations set up, we can actually hook into this when we play it. So back on the player controller deaths, where we get the death scene, we set the chosen animation, we spawn the character in, eventually we play the montage here. And if you remember last time, we specifically chose the play montage one so we could get a hold of the notifiers. So on notifier begin is where we will do our code. So I'm just going to drag off of the notify name and do a swip on name. It'll pop up for you. On here, I'm just going to come and untick has default pin. And on the pin's name, I'm just going to add in the name of our notifier. So start light fade. You can even come and copy it. And I'll just paste it in here like so. So this says, we'll just disconnect it from there and connect it to on notify begin. So this says while this animation is playing, or the montage, when a notify is received, so whenever it rolls over one of these here, click, it will then run it and check it, does it equal this value from the notify name, so start light fade, which is our custom one. So now that we've got our notifier, we can simply start the camera fade. So I'm just going to get the player camera manager, and then I'm going to drag off and do start camera fade. And I can plug this into the start light fade here. For the from alpha and the to alpha, you're changing the alpha of this color of this camera's fade. It's not the alpha of the screen. The alpha of the screen is 1. You can see the screen. That's not the way it works. So you want to start from no darkness and you want to set it to 1, so full darkness. We'll say in about a second. Then I'm going to say I want to hold it when it's finished. And that basically means it won't run the camera fade and immediately run back to something else. So if we just try it now, you should now see that he'll walk up, he'll do his stabby thing. There we go. And then the camera will start to fade out like so. So we definitely still need to play with the timings, and I do need to go on and extend those animations, which I will do. But now that we've got it fading, we actually need to tell it to show the UI after it's finished fading. So simple enough, what I'm going to do is just after the start camera fade, I'm actually going to add a new timer. So I'm going to do timer by event, and then the event, I'm just going to drag backwards and do add custom event. We'll just call it fade out finish. The time I will set to the exact same time as the duration, so 1. and that's all we need to do. The reason we have to set a timer is currently, to my knowledge, there is no way to actually tell when a camera fade is finished, which kind of sucks. It'd be nice if there was a sign on fade finish, but there isn't one. So after here, this is where we can now start creating our UI. So we can do create widget, and now we need to provide our class to it, which will be our actual UI. So don't worry about the error for now, just save it. So the UI for Batman uses something roughly like this. It's got a hint at the top that you can or can't do if you don't want to, but I'm not going to focus on that one for now. I'm just going to focus on this bit down here. So it says game failed, mission failed, whatever. It tells you a description of what's going off, and it gives you some simple buttons to pick. That's it. So there are many, many ways to develop a UI like this. I'm going to use Common UI because then it gives us better cross-platform compatibility. So when you switch between keyboards, mouse, controllers, and if you haven't got a Common UI set up yet, I would recommend checking out either Mr. Boutier, apologies for your name, but his tutorials. He has some amazing Common UI tutorials. Otherwise, you can install the free Narrative Common UI plugin, which basically just gives you Common UI that sets a bunch of stuff up for you and makes it a bit easier. This is what I'm going to be using. But the key thing you need is you need to have your project settings set up with your input. So if you go to project settings, you need to have Common UI input system set up with your input data and your platform input. If you follow the Narrative Common UI one, it'll take you like 5 minutes, if that. If you follow the standard Common UI one, it may take a little bit longer. But now that we've got that, we can come into our UI folder, and then I'm going to go into the widgets folder, and I'm going to create a new user interface widget blueprint. And now if you're using a standard widget and you're not using Common UI, you can just create a user widget. If you're using a specific Common UI setup, you will probably have to set up using a user widget. However, for me, because I'm using a narrative one, I'm just simply going to use a narrative menu. It already inherits from it, it's just got a bunch of stuff set up. So it should be the exact same whether you're using Common UI or not, but I'll tell you which controls to use instead. And I'll call this WB for widget blueprint, and then screen, and I'll open this up. So I'm just going to come and add a canvas panel onto it because we do need a canvas panel just to show everything. There we go. And this is where we can start designing the page now. So I am just, for this case, just going to like for like copy Batman's bottom part here. So I'm just going to come and grab a vertical box, and I'm going to stick it in the canvas panel there. I will then add a common text component here. And the only reason I'm using this is because it comes with styles that we can apply to it, which means I can change my entire game's fonts from very little locations. If you're not using Common UI, then you can simply just use the standard box or the rich text. So I'm going to add 2 of these in for the 2 mission failed and you have failed the challenge. So depending on how you are setting up your system, now it kind of depends on how we're going to do it. So since we're using Narrative Common UI, we can actually create some really easy cross-platformable buttons. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to come into my widgets folder, and I'm just going to create a small folder called components. And if you're not using Narrative Common UI, I still recommend doing this because then you get a generic button. So I'm going to go to user interface and widget button, and I'm going to search for common button. However, if you don't have Narrative Common UI, then in which case just do a normal user widget or a button. That works too. And I'm going to call this WBC for widget blueprint component, which means you don't tend to use it alone. And then I'm going to call it death screen button. Of course, you could just do a generic button if you want. I'm just going to do death screen button for now because I've not decided the UI style for this game yet. And you'll notice it looks just like a normal user widget, except it's a type of common button base, which means you don't actually have to put anything in here, like a canvas panel or anything like that. So to craft our button, I'm just going to come and add a horizontal box into it. And then I will add another common text. And remember, if you're not using Common UI, just add a regular text in. I'm just going to leave the text set to text block for now, but we'll set that via code in a minute. But one thing I will do is I will grab the common text and I'll just give it some padding of, say, let's say 40, just to give it a space when we do actually put it on the game. And then now if we go over to the graph, and we'll add the construct method, the construct event, and I'll also add the pre-construct because that will help us see it in the editor. And then what I'm going to do is come and promote the text to a variable so we can edit it. And I'll call it CTB button text, just so it looks nicer. Then I will drag in the button. I will do set text, and I'll just click the set text function. and I'll connect it to pre-construct as well so we can see it in the editor. Then I'll promote text to a variable, and then I will just make sure it's ticked as instance editable and expose on spawn. And I'll just give it a default value for now, just so it looks okay when we drag it in. And if I compile and save, that's all we need to do for the button. So if I come back over to death screen now, and underneath my text, I'm just going to add a vertical box. So the buttons stack next to each other, below each other. And I will search for our death screen. And you'll see we've got it right here. So let's add it there, and you can see it says retry. If I add another one, it will also say retry. But now, because we ticked expose on spawn and instance editable, we can type exit and it will immediately update it. So it's not looking great so far, so let's just go ahead and configure it. So we'll set the top one to be CTB for common text block, and we'll call it title. And then for the one below, CTB underscore description, I guess. For the top one, I'll just put some text like game over. And because we're using the common input one, we can actually set a style from predefined. So I'll just set it to a menu header. And then same with the description. I've got one that I copied and pasted. I'll paste it there. You have failed this game. Do you wish to retry or quit and return to the main menu? So for this one, I can also set a style. So we will do subheader. And then let's actually align it better now. So I'll tick size to content so it all wraps nicely. I'll make sure it's aligned at the bottom corner. And remember to read the instructions. So I'll hold Control and Shift to actually move it down. And then let's just say 400. That seems a bit much. 200 by minus 200. I do, of course, want this middle text to wrap a bit just to make it look a bit nicer. So let's go and auto wrap the text at 500. 800. I think the spacing for the buttons is a little bit much. So let's just come and affect that and change it to, say, 20. Compile and save. And then you can see it's a bit closer now. I want a little bit of a gap between the text and the buttons just to show that there's a significance. So I'll just add a regular spacer just above the vertical box. And we'll set the spacer size on the y-axis to something like 20. Oh, no, too big. 20, yes. There we go. So we can see our buttons quite obviously, and we can see the text. You can, of course, customize the buttons to look however you want. I will rename these just to make it a little bit easier. So DSB for death screen button, retry, and DSB underscore quit. You'll notice the buttons are stretched all the way out. That's going to cause us a little bit of an issue later. So what I'm going to do on the vertical box is just left align it like so. So only the length of the button that it needs to. And now let's actually make it functional. So I'm going to come and click the retry button, scroll down and tick on clicked. And I'll do the exact same thing for the exit button, like so. And then for the retry, let's just simply call open level. Eventually, we'll make it remember the level, go to the right place, all that other stuff. But for now, we'll just do a simple open level. And the level I'm going to open will be my main landscape. And then for the quit, you can just use the built-in Unreal quit game. And then the specific player will be our get player controller. If you're using a multiplayer game, just remember to select the correct player. And I'll hit compile and save. And that should be it, ladies and gentlemen. You can, of course, do anything you want with it. You can animate it, fade it in, do all of that other stuff. For me, that's going to be okay as it is. So let's actually spawn this UI. So back on our player controller, right at the end where our function is on our timer. If you're just using a standard widget, you can simply just come and call create widget and show it. However, I'm using the narrative common UI, so it's a little bit different. Instead, I'm actually going to create a widget right at the start, and then I'm going to set it to a type of narrative like so. I'll promote this to a variable called players, and then I'll promote this to a variable, and then I'll add this to the viewport, and then I can connect it up and wrap it in a comment, create narrative HUD. And all this is just a basic common UI wrapper. So if you are using just standard common UI, you just need access to a menu stack. So you can access the push option and you can push the widget to it. Narrative common UI just sets all that up for you to make it a bit easier. But now for anyone using narrative common UI, we simply drag the player's HUD in and just call open menu. And it'll take care of all the control switching, all the platform switching and everything like that. So you can see our death screen is right there. If we hit compile and save, if we try it now, ladies and gentlemen, after the animation plays, so you can see I still need to fix those animations, but he'll stab us. We've died. But then as soon as it finishes, the menu shows. How cool is that, ladies and gentlemen? And you can see we can hover over it. I can tick exit to quit. just to test the platform compatibility, if I just get my PlayStation 5 controller, we'll connect this over to a USB, and then I'll plug it in, and you should see Unreal should potentially recognize that it's connected. There we go. And however, you will notice, in Common UI at least, that once it works, you'll see it doesn't fully work at the moment. So only for you Common UI people, all you need to do is on your main widget in the graph, just override the get desired focus target and plug in the one you want to start with. So in my case, I want to start with the retry button. And that's all you really need to do. So if I come and play it this time, I'm going to imagine these animations are going to look so good with the dialogue. You'll see now as soon as I switch to Xbox or PlayStation, I can move up and down the options. And as soon as I press X, it will at the moment freeze the game because it's loading the biggest level in my game. If I built the game, it would have a loading screen. So in the editor, it doesn't look great, but that's all good. And you can see I'm now in my game and I can move around there. And you can see I'm definitely on a controller there. It says press X. But if I switch to keyboard and mouse, it instantly updates to E. How cool is that, ladies and gentlemen? Now you may be wondering, how do we add the buttons across the bottom to show you which one to select? I don't actually know at this moment, because typically the way you do it, at least in narrative, is you override the register actions function here, and you call the register binding here. This one I believe calls some code in C++, which basically does the same thing, but I've not managed to get this to work, because as soon as I do this, it stops actually making the selection work, which isn't great. So until I figure that out, I'm not actually going to do that for now. But you could always fake it if you really wanted it by finding the common action widget there. Put this wherever you want it, so I just put it under there just temporarily. You can now come and select what input actions you want to control it. And that's a way to fake it. I'm not happy with that. I don't want to fake it. But there we go, ladies and gentlemen. There is the Batman death screen. As soon as we click play, he walks in all mysterious. He taunts you. In this case, he slashes your chest and then stabs you. And then he walks away happily as the UI fades on and we can select our option. In the next tutorial, we're going to look at adding the dialogue for the game to make him taunt you really well. And then I will hopefully try to remember to fix the animations to redistribute those. But there we go. If you've got any issues, please let me know. My name is Decryption, and I will see you next time.